You are walking through the echoing stone corridors of a medieval castle. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and old wood. Outside, a kingdom hums with life, but within these walls, a secret struggle is unfolding. A king, the very heart of the realm, is ill. His health, his life, is a matter of utmost secrecy, guarded by shadows and whispered prayers. You are about to step into this hidden world, where the most brilliant minds of the age, the medieval doctors, face their greatest challenge. They must heal their sovereign, but their methods are often strange, their knowledge limited, and their failures carry a deadly price. We will explore the silent dramas of royal ailments, the desperate cures, and the intricate web of power and fear that surrounded the king's bedside. This is the untold story of those who wielded both scalpel and secret, healing kings in the quiet darkness of the past. You stand in the antechamber, the whispers of worried courtiers barely audible above the crackling fire. Outside, the castle grounds are bustling, but here, in the heart of power, a profound stillness has fallen. The very air feels heavy with unspoken dread. For the medieval mind, a king was more than just a man. He was the embodiment of the kingdom itself, a living vessel for its strength, its prosperity, and its divine favor. When the king was healthy, the realm was seen as healthy. Its fields would yield bountiful harvests. Its armies would be victorious. Its people would thrive under God's watchful eye. But when the king fell ill, even with a common fever, it was not merely a personal misfortune. It was a crisis that rippled through every level of society, shaking the very foundations of the state. Imagine the fear that grips the highest nobles. You see them gather in hushed groups, their faces etched with concern, not just for their sovereign but for their own positions, their lands, their very lives. A sick king meant an unstable kingdom, and instability was a predator, always lurking at the borders and within the castle walls. Consider the question of succession. In an age without sophisticated medical prognosis, a sudden illness could quickly become fatal. If the king were to die without a clear, strong heir, or if his successor was too young, chaos could erupt. You can almost hear the clamor of rival claimants, the distant clang of swords as ambitious barons seize the opportunity to advance their own families. The future of the entire royal line, and therefore the nation, hung precariously on the slender thread of one man's vitality. Every cough, every flush of fever, every moment of delirium was a potential harbinger of civil war. Beyond internal strife, a king's illness was a glaring invitation to external enemies. You can picture the spies lurking in the shadows of foreign courts, their ears perked for any rumor of weakness emanating from your kingdom. A neighboring monarch, previously deterred by the formidable reputation of your healthy sovereign, might suddenly see an opening. Borders could be breached. Treaties could be ignored. Years of peace could unravel in a single season if the king was perceived to be incapacitated or on his deathbed. Maintaining an outward facade of royal health was not merely about pride. It was a critical matter of national security. Think about the psychological impact on the common people. While they might not know the exact details of the king's ailment, rumors spread like wildfire. You can imagine the murmurs in the village squares, the fearful glances exchanged in the market. If the king, chosen by God to rule, was suffering, what did that mean for them? Was it a sign of divine displeasure? Would their crops fail? Would famine follow? The king's body was a sacred symbol, and its ailing could be interpreted as a bad omen for the entire realm, undermining faith in the monarchy and potentially leading to unrest. The very legitimacy of the crown was tied to the well-being of the one who wore it. This is why secrecy was paramount, a cloak drawn tightly around the royal bedchamber. You understand now why the castle seemed to hold its breath. News of the king's illness had to be carefully managed, sometimes even outright denied, to prevent panic, to deter enemies, and to suppress the ambitions of those within the court who might seek to exploit a moment of weakness. The physicians were not just healers, they were guardians of state secrets, their lips sealed, their movements watched, their loyalty unquestionable. Imagine the pressure on these medieval doctors. Their task was not simply to apply leeches or prescribe herbal remedies. Their every diagnostic decision, every recommended treatment, was weighted with the destiny of a nation. If they failed, the consequences were dire not just for the king but for his family, his court, and potentially millions of subjects. You can feel the intense scrutiny, the silent judgments of powerful nobles and anxious family members, watching every move, every grimace. The medieval understanding of disease was, by modern standards, rudimentary. Physicians relied on theories like the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. An illness was believed to be an imbalance of these humors, and treatment often involved restoring that balance through bloodletting, purging, or specific dietary regimens. For a king whose health was so critical, these often invasive and sometimes dangerous treatments were carried out with the utmost gravity, in hope that the balance could be restored. Consider a common ailment such as a high fever. Today we might think of it as a relatively straightforward infection. But in the medieval era, a persistent fever could be terrifying. It could indicate a host of unknown internal maladies, leading to delirium, weakness, and eventually death. You can almost feel the sweat on the king's brow, the heat radiating from his skin, as the doctors frantically debate whether to bleed him more, or administer a powerful laxative, or wrap him in cooling cloths, all while knowing that one wrong decision could seal the fate of a kingdom. The king's vulnerability extended beyond physical illness. Mental affliction, though less openly discussed, was equally devastating. A monarch suffering from melancholy, paranoia, or outright madness could plunge the court into disarray and the kingdom into peril. How do you govern when the very mind that commands the realm is compromised? Such conditions were often attributed to demonic possession or divine punishment, adding another layer of fear and mystery to the already complex challenge facing the royal physicians. You can imagine the desperate prayers offered, the invocations to saints, the pleas for intervention from forces beyond mortal comprehension. The isolation of royalty, ironically, often contributed to their vulnerability. Despite being surrounded by courtiers and servants, a king's personal life, including his health, was intensely private yet intensely public. He might not have access to a wide range of opinions or alternative treatments, bound instead by the traditions of the court and the trusted, but sometimes limited, knowledge of his personal physicians. The choices were few, the stakes immeasurably high. You begin to grasp the true weight of the doctor's oath when tending to a king. It was an oath not just to preserve life, but to preserve order. To maintain the illusion of unshakable strength even when the monarch was at his weakest. To whisper diagnoses in secret councils, and to offer pronouncements of recovery with carefully chosen words. Their role was a perilous dance between the art of medicine and the brutal realities of power politics. They were often men of science, or at least men of learning, caught in a web of superstition, political intrigue, and profound uncertainty. Their failure was not merely a loss of a patient, it was a potential catastrophe for an entire nation. The very fate of the realm, its borders, its people, its prosperity, its peace, all hinged on the frail health of one man, and the skills, luck, and political acumen of the doctors who attended him in the quiet, shadowed chambers of power. You step into the hushed antechamber, the heavy oak door swinging shut behind you with a soft sigh, muffling the distant sounds of the castle. The air here is thick with expectation, with a potent blend of wood smoke, old tapestries, and the faint, unsettling odor of illness. Shadows cling to the corners of the cavernous room, even in the daytime, giving an almost conspiratorial feel to every glance, every whispered word. This is where the true battle for the king's life begins, not on a battlefield but within these quiet walls. You are acutely aware of the eyes upon you, though no one dares to stare directly. Courtiers, their faces carefully neutral, linger like statues, their ears straining for any hint of news. A page stands sentinel, his youthfulness a stark contrast to the gravitas of the situation. You carry your satchel, a simple leather bag containing your instruments and potions, but its true weight is the crushing burden of responsibility you bear. The king's health is a state secret, a vulnerability that cannot be exposed to rivals, to ambitious nobles, or to the common folk who rely on the image of an invincible monarch. If the king falters, the kingdom might falter. If he shows weakness, others might plot. Your first duty, even before diagnosis, is absolute discretion. You are a vault, a silent keeper of the most dangerous information in the realm. You pass through another door into the king's private bedchamber. Here the air is heavier still, charged with the king's labored breathing, the scent of medicinal herbs, and a palpable tension that seems to hum in the very stones of the wall. The room is opulent, draped in rich fabrics, but all that luxury now seems to mock the fragility of the human body lying beneath silken sheets. You approach the royal bed. The king, a man who normally commands armies and pronounces justice with thunder in his voice, now lies pale and diminished, his brow furrowed with pain or fever. He might be restless or unnervingly still. You observe him closely, your gaze taking in every detail. The flush on his skin, the tremor in his hand, the dullness in his eyes. Without the benefit of thermometers, stethoscopes, or microscopes, you rely on your keen senses and centuries-old wisdom. You feel his pulse at the wrist, a rapid fluttering or a slow, thready beat, each telling you a story. You examine his tongue, looking for coatings or discolorations that medieval medicine believed indicated imbalances of the humors. You listen to his breathing, trying to discern congestion or a deeper ailment. You might even taste his urine, a common, if distasteful, diagnostic tool of the era, searching for signs of sweetness or other abnormalities. Each observation is a piece of a puzzle, a fragment of truth in a world shrouded by ignorance and superstition. You must interpret these signs, combine them with your knowledge of ancient texts and herbal remedies, and then formulate a course of action. Will you bleed him to rid the body of excess humors? Will you administer a powerful purgative or an emetic, to cleanse him from within? Or will you concoct a specific elixir of herbs, hoping its properties will bring relief? Every choice you make is fraught with immense peril. If the king worsens, your reputation is not merely tarnished, your very life could be forfeit. Courtiers are quick to whisper accusations of incompetence, or worse, of malicious intent. Political rivals might seize upon any decline in the king's health to sow discord, and you, the man closest to the ailing monarch, become an easy scapegoat. Imagine the fear. A king weakened by illness might grow paranoid. He could suspect poisoning, witchcraft, or treason. And who better to accuse than the one administering strange concoctions and touching his most sacred person? You could find yourself dragged from the king's chambers, not to be praised for your efforts, but to face torture in the dungeons, forced to confess to crimes you did not commit. The weight of this fear is a constant companion. It shadows every consultation, every prescribed dose, every hushed conversation with the queen or the regent. You must speak in careful metaphors, avoid direct pronouncements of doom, and always maintain an air of confidence, even when you feel the cold grip of doubt in your own heart. You are not merely treating a body, you are managing an entire political ecosystem. If you declare the king too ill to rule, it could ignite a succession crisis, plunging the kingdom into civil war. If you wrongly pronounce him recovered only for him to relapse, the repercussions would be equally catastrophic, and once again your head would likely be on the chopping block. Consider the political factions swirling around the throne. The queen, perhaps, with her own ambitions for her son. Powerful dukes, eager for more influence. The church, ever watchful, ever ready to assert its spiritual authority over temporal power. Each of these players watches you, the physician, with intense scrutiny, each interpreting your every move through the lens of their own self-interest. You are a pawn in a game far larger than medicine. Sometimes the king's ailment itself might be a secret. Perhaps he suffers from a scandalous disease, one that would bring shame upon the crown if revealed. You are then tasked not only with healing, but with concealing the truth, concocting plausible explanations for his seclusion, for his strange symptoms. You become a master of misdirection, a weaver of narratives, ensuring the illusion of the king's divine health remains intact. And what of the treatments themselves? You are operating with the best knowledge of your time, but that knowledge is often limited and sometimes dangerous. Bleeding, purging, herbal remedies that could be poisonous in the wrong dose. You are balancing the known risks of the treatment against the unknown risks of the disease, all while a kingdom holds its breath. The line between healer and harm-doer is disturbingly thin, particularly when a king's life hangs in the balance. The pressure is immense. You sleep fitfully, if at all, your mind racing with potential diagnoses, with the formulas for a new concoction, with the political implications of every cough and fever. Your social interactions become guarded, your public statements carefully measured. You cannot afford a slip of the tongue, a moment of weakness, or an expression of doubt. Your life is entwined with the monarch's, but in a uniquely precarious way. His health dictates your standing, your freedom, even your very existence. You are a highly valued servant, yet perpetually on the edge of the precipice. You hold immense power in your knowledge and proximity, but that power is a double-edged sword, capable of cutting you down with a single misstep. You are the silent witness to the king's most intimate vulnerabilities. You see him stripped of his regal armor, reduced to a mere mortal struggling against pain and disease. This shared intimacy, this secret knowledge, creates a unique bond, yet it also heightens the danger. You know too much. You have seen too much. And in a court where secrets are currency and vulnerability is a weapon, such knowledge can be a death sentence. The whispers in the court are not just about the king's illness. They are about you. Are you competent? Are you loyal? Are you perhaps a foreign agent, or a sorcerer, or an ambitious fool seeking to gain undue influence? Every setback for the king fuels these rumors, turns suspicion into accusation, and transforms the physician into the primary suspect. You navigate this treacherous landscape not with a sword, but with your wits, your knowledge, and an unwavering poker face, knowing that one wrong move could cost you everything. You are a scholar, a scientist of your age, practicing medicine in a world that still believes in divine intervention and demonic possession. You must carefully tread the line between reason and superstition, between empirical observation and the expectations of a religious court. To appear too rational might brand you a heretic. To appear too superstitious might mark you as a charlatan. The tightrope walk is endless, and the fall is always a possibility. Ultimately, your success is measured not just by the king's recovery, but by the seamless continuation of power, the preservation of the royal image, and the absence of political upheaval. You are a silent guardian, a medical alchemist, transmuting illness into stability, and in doing so, you gamble your own life with every decision. The physician to a king is not merely a healer. He is a silent architect of the realm's destiny, often at his own profound peril. You stand in the royal chamber, the air thick with anticipation, the king's life a delicate thread in your hands. But before you can even consider a remedy, you must first understand the malady itself. Your world views illness not as a random misfortune, but as a profound imbalance, a disturbance in the very essence of the human body and its connection to the cosmos. This is the science of your age, a system refined over centuries, stemming from the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome, filtered through Arab scholarship and Christian theology. You have learned that the human body is a microcosm, a small universe reflecting the grand one. Its health hinges upon the delicate equilibrium of four vital fluids, the humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each corresponds to one of the four classical elements and their associated qualities. Blood, warm and wet, linked to air, resides predominantly in the heart. Phlegm, cold and wet, tied to water, finds its home in the brain and lungs. Yellow bile, warm and dry, akin to fire, flows from the liver. And finally, black bile, cold and dry, connected to earth, originating in the spleen. As the king's physician, you are not merely observing symptoms. you are deciphering a humoral narrative. A flushed face, a rapid pulse, an agitated temperament, these are not isolated events, but signs of an excess of blood, a sanguine imbalance. A cold sweat, sluggishness, a persistent cough, these might point to a surplus of phlegm. A sharp pain, a yellowing of the skin, a quick temper, the telltale signs of too much yellow bile. And melancholy, dark thoughts, a pallid complexion, these are attributed to an overabundance of black bile. Every patient, and certainly every king, presents a unique humoral puzzle. Your diagnostic tools are your senses and your vast accumulated knowledge. You inspect the king's urine not just for its color but for its clarity, its sediment, its very odor. You feel his pulse, discerning not only its speed but its strength, its rhythm, its very character. You observe his skin, his eyes, his tongue. You listen to his breathing. You inquire about his sleep, his appetite, his dreams. You consider his temperament, his usual disposition, for a man's natural humor often dictates his predispositions to certain ailments. Having diagnosed the imbalance, your sacred duty is to restore harmony. This is where your true artistry as a physician comes into play. You have a formidable arsenal of treatments, all aimed at re-establishing the proper proportion of the humors. Consider bloodletting, for example, a cornerstone of medieval medicine, often performed with a solemn ritual. If the king suffers from a fever, a throbbing headache, or any condition indicating an excess of blood, you might choose to open a vein. You select a specific vein, perhaps in the arm, guided by anatomical charts passed down through generations. A sharp lancet, meticulously cleaned, is applied, and the dark vital fluid is allowed to flow into a basin, sometimes for a precise amount, other times until the king shows signs of faintness, signifying the release of the offending surplus. Alternatively, you might apply leeches, their segmented bodies swelling with the king's blood, or use cupping glasses, heated to create a vacuum that draws blood to the surface of the skin. It seems drastic, perhaps even dangerous to a modern mind, but to you, it is a logical and often necessary procedure to cool inflamed humors and relieve bodily pressure. But bloodletting is just one method. You also employ purging, using powerful emetics to induce vomiting or strong laxatives to clear the bowels, believing these too can expel noxious humors from the body. You might prescribe a change in diet, recommending hot foods for cold conditions, or dry foods for wet ones. Herbal remedies are meticulously prepared, specific plants chosen for their inherent qualities, a cooling herb for a fever, a warming spice for a chill. You consider the king's environment, the warmth of his chambers, the quality of the air, the amount of rest he receives. Every aspect of his existence is a variable in your intricate humoral equation. Yet, your understanding of the body extends beyond its internal fluids. You know that earthly beings are irrevocably linked to the celestial sphere. The stars, the planets, the moon, they exert a profound influence on health and disease. This is astrological medicine, a vital component of your practice. You are not only a physician but also a skilled astronomer, constantly consulting your ephemeris, a book of astronomical tables to track the movements of the heavenly bodies. You understand that each planet rules specific organs and body parts. Mars, for example, is associated with the head and the reproductive organs, while Jupiter governs the liver and the blood. The moon, with its waxing and waning phases, impacts the body's fluids, making certain days more auspicious for bloodletting or purging. You never initiate a major treatment without first casting an astrological chart for the moment of the king's illness or for the optimal time for intervention. A bloodletting performed under an unfavorable planetary alignment could, in your belief, do more harm than good, disturbing the cosmic harmony that reflects in the king's own body. For example, you would be hesitant to bleed a patient from a limb when the moon is in the zodiacal sign governing that limb, fearing it would exacerbate the problem. Instead, you would wait for a more favorable planetary hour, when the celestial influences are aligned to support healing, not hinder it. You must advise the king on these matters too. Perhaps a particular diet during a certain lunar phase, or the wearing of a specific amulet during a time of planetary distress. This intricate tapestry of humoral theory and astrological influence forms the bedrock of your medical practice. It is a system that demands constant study, precise observation, and an unwavering faith in its principles. You are not guessing. You are applying a sophisticated, albeit ancient, science. You learn from every case, from every royal patient you treat in secrecy, constantly refining your interpretations of the pulse, the urine, the stars, and the humors. The challenges are immense. Not every treatment is successful. Not every king recovers. But even in failure, you strive to understand why, to learn from the body's mysterious refusal to conform. Was the humoral imbalance too great? Was the celestial alignment too adverse? Was the dosage of herbs incorrect? These are the questions that haunt your nights, driving you to pore over ancient texts and consult with fellow scholars. You carry the weight of tradition, the expectations of the court, and the very life of the realm's most important figure on your shoulders. Your decisions are not merely medical, they are political, spiritual, and cosmic. You are a practitioner of the medieval malady, using all the tools available to you, your knowledge of the humors, your understanding of the heavens, and your keen observation of the human form, to guide the king, and by extension the kingdom, back to health and stability. This is the perilous, fascinating, and deeply serious work of a royal physician in an age far removed from our own, where every sniffle could signal the downfall of a dynasty, and every star held a secret to a king's recovery. But when the stars have been consulted, and the humors rigorously debated, where does the true struggle against the malady unfold? Where does a king, so public in his power, become a patient, private in his pain and vulnerability? It is here, behind the heavy woven hangings of the royal chamber, that you find the true heart of your perilous work. You step across the threshold, not into the grandeur of the court, but into a hushed, dimly lit world. The air is thick with the scent of illness, of medicinal herbs, and perhaps the faint, lingering fragrance of old incense. Here, the usual bustling sounds of the palace are muffled, absorbed by the rich tapestries that adorn every wall. These are not merely decorative. They are functional, practical barriers against the chill of the stone walls, creating a warmer, more intimate space. They also act as acoustic sponges, muting all sound, transforming the spacious room into a cocoon of discretion. You observe the chamber, your senses alert. The light, usually from a tall leaded window, is now often filtered by heavy drapes or supplemented by the flickering, dancing glow of beeswax candles, casting long, shifting shadows. This creates an atmosphere both solemn and secretive, a sacred space where the usual rules of courtly etiquette are suspended, replaced by the grim realities of the body. You hear the faint rustle of servants moving quietly, perhaps the low murmur of a priest offering solace, but above all, you hear the sound that matters most, the king's breathing. The king lies beneath heavy furs and embroidered linens, his usually commanding presence diminished by the grip of his ailment. The crown and scepter are far removed. Here he is simply a man of flesh and blood, vulnerable and suffering. The royal bed, often a monumental piece of furniture, becomes a sickbed, its carved posts silent witnesses to his struggle. Your immediate task is to assess, to observe, to listen. You approach the bedside with a respectful yet authoritative presence. This is a place of profound intimacy, where the usual social distances between monarch and subject evaporate. You are granted access to the king's body in a way few others are, a privilege born of dire necessity and deep trust. You extend your hand, gently taking the king's wrist. You feel for the pulse, counting its beats, noting its strength or weakness, its regularity or irregularity. Is it thready and rapid, suggesting a fever's fire? Or slow and weak, hinting at a depletion of vital spirits? Your fingers are your instruments, sensitive to every subtle vibration, every tremor. You are not just counting. You are interpreting, reading the body's secret language. Your gaze sweeps over the king's face. Is his skin flushed or pale, dry or clammy? Do his eyes hold the dull glaze of fatigue, or the sharp, desperate glint of pain? You note the slight tremor of his hands, the furrow in his brow, the shallow or labored rhythm of his chest. Every detail is a clue, a piece of the puzzle you must solve. This royal chamber, shielded by its tapestries, becomes a sanctuary not just for suffering but for secrecy. A king's illness is not merely a personal matter, it is a matter of state. Rumors of royal weakness can invite political instability, embolden rivals, or trigger widespread fear. Therefore, every aspect of his illness, every painful symptom, every faltering moment, must be guarded with the utmost care. You, the royal physician, become the keeper of these most vital secrets. You might be called upon to examine the king's urine, holding the glass flask up to the candlelight, scrutinizing its color, clarity, and sediment. Is it dark and cloudy, suggesting an excess of black bile? Or pale and watery, indicating a chill in the kidneys? The uroscopy, as it is called, is a key diagnostic tool, allowing you a glimpse into the internal state of the king without intrusive examination. Or perhaps you must inspect his stool, a truly intimate and often unpleasant task, yet absolutely critical for understanding his digestive humors. These are not actions taken lightly, nor are they performed in public. These are rituals of profound privacy, conducted within the confines of this secret sanctuary, known only to you and a handful of the most trusted inner circle. The king, stripped of his regalia, is at his most vulnerable here. He relies entirely upon your skill, your knowledge, your judgment. His fear, his pain, his hopes for recovery are laid bare before you. You become not only his healer but his confidant, a silent recipient of his unspoken anxieties. This deep personal connection, forged in the crucible of illness, is unique. You see the king as no other subject ever can, beyond the mask of sovereignty, beyond the demands of leadership. The treatments themselves are often performed within these hidden walls. If a bloodletting is required, you prepare your lancet and bowl, positioning the king's arm carefully. The act of drawing blood, a common remedy to rebalance the humors, is done with precision and a quiet solemnity. If a purgative is administered, you ensure the king's privacy and comfort, despite the unpleasantness of the process. Every poultice, every herbal draught, every enema is given with a careful hand and an eye towards minimizing distress. You do not simply prescribe, you administer. You oversee the concoction of remedies, ensuring the precise measurements of herbs, spices, and other ingredients. You watch as the king drinks the bitter brew, observing his reaction, noting whether it brings relief or discomfort. Your presence is constant, your vigilance unwavering. You are always learning, always adapting, always striving to understand the subtle shifts in the king's condition. The tapestries that enclose this space also contain the sounds of suffering. A cough, a groan, a gasp of pain. These sounds are absorbed, preventing them from carrying beyond the chamber and fueling unsettling whispers in the court. The king's dignity, even in his moments of weakness, must be preserved. Your role extends to protecting that dignity, to ensuring that his suffering remains a private ordeal, known only to those whose loyalty is beyond question. In this secret sanctuary, the physician's tools are not just herbs and surgical instruments. They are also observation, discretion, and the profound trust placed in you. You are more than a healer. You are a guardian of the king's health, his privacy, and by extension, the stability of the entire realm. The weight of this responsibility presses upon you, heavy as the silence in the chamber, profound as the hope in the king's eyes. This is where the grand theories of humoral medicine and celestial influence meet the raw, undeniable reality of a suffering human body. This is where your true test lies, in the intimate, unglamorous, and deeply confidential work of guiding a king back from the precipice of illness, one careful observation, one precise treatment, and one guarded secret at a time. This is the truth behind the tapestry, the hidden world where a king's humanity is revealed, and his future hangs in the balance. The king's future indeed hangs by a thread, and it is your hand, guided by centuries of medical wisdom and a profound sense of duty, that must now grasp that thread and attempt to weave it back into the tapestry of health. You stand ready, your instruments laid out on a pristine linen cloth, each one a testament to the limited, yet deeply held, understanding of the human body in your time. To the modern eye, this array might seem more akin to a torturer's kit than a healer's, but to you, these are the proven tools for rebalancing the delicate humors that govern life itself. Your first line of defense, often, is bloodletting. You prepare the king, perhaps by wrapping a tourniquet around his arm, causing the veins to swell just beneath the skin. The air in the chamber is thick with anticipation. The only sounds a soft rustle of your robes and the king's slow, measured breaths. You select a lancet, its blade finely honed, gleaming dully in the candlelight. It is not just a knife, it is a key meant to unlock the excess blood believed to be the root of fevers, inflammation, or a plethora of other ailments. You make a precise incision into a prominent vein, usually in the arm or leg. A small bowl, often ornate and silver, is held ready by an assistant to catch the dark, flowing stream. You watch carefully, counting the ounces, judging the color, sometimes even tasting a drop, though that is for your own discernment, never for show. The theory is elegant in its simplicity. Too much blood, a plethoric state, leads to an imbalance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. By drawing off the offending humor, you restore the body's natural equilibrium. You might bleed from the cephalic vein, the median basilic, or even the saphenous vein in the leg, depending on the specific affliction and the astrological signs guiding your hand. The quantity of blood to be let is not arbitrary. It is calculated based on the patient's age, constitution, the severity of the illness, and crucially, the phase of the moon and the planetary positions. A critical decision, made under immense pressure with the life of a monarch in your hands. Beyond the simple lancet, you might employ scarification and cupping. You heat a small glass cup, creating a vacuum as it cools, and quickly place it upon the king's skin. You can perform dry cupping, where the suction alone is believed to draw blood and humors to the surface, relieving internal congestion. Or, for a more aggressive approach, you might first use a scarifier, a spring-loaded instrument with multiple small blades, to make shallow cuts on the skin before applying the heated cup. This is wet cupping, and its purpose is to draw out corrupt blood directly, allowing it to pool within the cup as the vacuum pulls it from the tiny incisions. It is a messy, visceral procedure, yet it is performed with the utmost precision and a calm demeanor, as if it were the most natural act in the world. The king, pale and perhaps sweating, endures it, his faith in your skill a fragile shield against the discomfort. Then there are the leeches. You might apply several plump, segmented creatures to an afflicted area, allowing them to gorge themselves on the king's blood. These are not merely worms. They are nature's own phlebotomists, believed to possess a peculiar virtue for purifying the blood and drawing out localized inflammation. You carefully monitor their feeding, ensuring they detach naturally once engorged, or gently coaxing them off if they prove stubborn. The sight of these creatures, engorged and dark, can be unsettling, but in your world they are a vital part of your healing toolkit. Once the bleeding is complete, or perhaps as a complementary treatment, you turn to your potions. Your alchemical cabinet is a treasure trove of remedies, some commonplace, some exquisitely rare and expensive. You have concoctions brewed from hundreds of different ingredients, each with its own purported power. These are not merely folk remedies. They are sophisticated formulations, often prescribed after extensive consultation with ancient texts and meticulous observation. You might administer a powerful purgative, a bitter draught designed to induce vomiting or diarrhea, to rid the body of excess black or yellow bile. The king drinks it, perhaps with a grimace, knowing that discomfort today might mean health tomorrow. You watch closely, noting the nature of the expulsion, believing it offers crucial diagnostic clues about the specific humoral imbalance at play. Perhaps the king suffers from a lingering cough. You would prepare a soothing syrup made from honey, licorice, and perhaps marshmallow root, mixed with warming spices like ginger or cinnamon. For a fever, you might prescribe a cooling concoction of willow bark, known for its anti-inflammatory properties, or a distilled essence of borage, believed to calm the heart and reduce heat. But your arsenal includes far more exotic ingredients. You possess finely ground pearls, believed to strengthen the heart and dispel melancholy. Gold leaf, suspended in a tonic, is thought to purify the blood and restore vitality. Amber, powdered and mixed into a draught, might be prescribed for various internal ailments, particularly those affecting the stomach or bladder. For the most serious of conditions, you might turn to theriac or mithridacium, complex electuaries containing dozens of ingredients, some incredibly potent, including opium. These are universal antidotes, believed to counteract poisons and cure a vast array of diseases, their recipes shrouded in ancient mystique and guarded with fervent secrecy. Each ingredient, from the common garden herb to the rare unicorn horn, or what is claimed to be such, is chosen with deliberate intent, its properties catalogued and understood through generations of medical practice. You painstakingly prepare these medicines yourself, or under your direct supervision. You grind herbs in a mortar, watching the powders meld, inhaling the pungent aromas. You distill essences, carefully measuring each drop. You brew decoctions over a gentle flame, the simmering liquid filling the secret chamber with an earthy, medicinal scent. The precision required is immense, for a king's life depends on it, and any error could be catastrophic, potentially misinterpreted as treason or incompetence. You also know the value of an enema. For constipation or to cleanse the lower bowels, you prepare a mixture of warm water, perhaps with a mild laxative herb like senna or even a little soap. The procedure, though undignified, is considered essential for evacuating noxious humors and promoting general health. It is another intimate moment, a king surrendering his body to your hands, trusting completely in your judgment for even the most personal of treatments. Your role extends beyond mere physical intervention. You are a scholar of the stars, understanding that the celestial bodies exert profound influence over earthly affairs, including human health. Before commencing any major treatment, a bloodletting, a purge, or even the brewing of a powerful potion, you consult your astrological charts. You scrutinize the position of the moon, the planets, and the zodiac signs. Bleeding might be contraindicated during certain moon phases or when the moon is in a dry sign like Aries or Leo. Administering a strong purgative might be reserved for when the moon is in a wet sign like Cancer or Scorpio, believed to enhance its expulsive powers. Your careful calculations add another layer of perceived scientific rigor and divine sanction to your actions, reinforcing the belief that you are working in harmony with the cosmos itself. All these practices, from the sharp bite of the lancet to the bitter swallow of a potion, are carried out under a pall of silence, broken only by your instructions and the king's occasional sigh or groan. You observe every tremor, every flicker of expression on his face. You note the color of his urine, the texture of his stools, the quality of his pulse. These are your vital signs, your windows into the internal battle waging within his royal person. Your hands, stained perhaps with dried blood or the residue of potent herbs, are the hands of a healer, a scientist, and a silent confidant. You believe with every fiber of your being that these methods, though arduous, are the path to recovery, the only way to restore the king to his rightful state of health and vigor. And in that belief, the king finds his own fragile hope, enduring the grim arsenal of medieval medicine for the sake of his throne, his realm, and his very life. Yet there are other paths, whispered in the dim corridors of learning, pursued in secret laboratories hidden far from prying eyes. These are the paths less traveled, the arts often deemed perilous, even forbidden, by the established church and the common folk. As a physician to the king, when the conventional remedies falter, when the royal life hangs by a thread, you find yourself drawn to these esoteric practices, a shadowy realm of healing where science, magic, and profound belief entwine. This is the alchemy of the afflicted, the forbidden arts for royal health. You understand that the conventional world, with its prayers and its poultices, sometimes proves insufficient against the relentless grip of disease that threatens a monarch. You carry within you not just the knowledge of herbs and humors, but also the ancient texts that speak of deeper transformations, of the quintessence of matter, and the hidden sympathies of the cosmos. Your work in this domain is cloaked in even greater secrecy than your usual duties, for to be discovered dabbling in these deeper mysteries could mean ruin, accusation of sorcery, or worse. Imagine a hidden chamber, perhaps deep within the castle's oldest tower, or a detached building discreetly tucked away within the palace grounds. Here, away from the chatter of courtiers and the watchful eyes of the clergy, your true laboratory exists. The air is thick with the scent of strange distillates, the tang of heated metals, and the earthy perfume of exotic resins. On stone tables you arrange alembics and retorts, their glass forms catching the flickering light of tallow candles or a carefully controlled furnace. Bubbling flasks contain liquids of unnatural hues, brilliant crimson, iridescent green, deep, swirling violet. This is not simply herbalism. This is the pursuit of perfection through purification, extraction, and synthesis. This is medical alchemy. You seek not just to cure but to elevate, to transmute the very essence of the king's failing health into robust vitality. The alchemist's quest for the philosopher's stone, which could turn base metals into gold, holds a parallel medical ambition: the creation of a universal panacea, an elixir of life capable of eradicating all disease and even granting a measure of immortality. While such a grand achievement remains a distant dream, you believe that fragments of this ultimate wisdom can be applied, that powerful, concentrated remedies can be forged through these alchemical processes. Your studies delve into the separation of a substance into its fundamental components, salt, sulfur, and mercury, and their recombination in more potent forms. You meticulously distill botanical essences, not just for their immediate properties, but to capture their spirit or quintessence, believing that this concentrated life force holds unparalleled healing power. For example, you might spend weeks extracting the volatile oils from a rare plant, subjecting them to multiple distillations and cohibations, a process of repeated distillation over the same residue, to intensify their virtues 100-fold. This is not simply brewing a tea, it is coaxing the very soul out of nature's bounty. The forbidden aspect often arises from the source of your materials or the intent of your manipulations. Some alchemical texts speak of ingredients drawn from the human body itself: blood, urine, even hair or nails, purified and distilled to create sympathetic remedies. While you might recoil from the most extreme interpretations, the concept of a medicine uniquely attuned to the king's own being holds a compelling, if unsettling, logic. You might also seek out rare minerals, stones said to possess latent powers, or even astrological timings that are considered exceptionally auspicious for the creation of such potent elixirs, pushing the boundaries of what is considered acceptable celestial influence. The pressure on you is immense. Failure to heal the king could lead to your downfall, even your execution. Success, however, secures your position, enhances your reputation, and most importantly, saves the kingdom from potential chaos or succession crises. This immense burden drives you to explore every avenue, no matter how unorthodox or dangerous its reputation. The king, desperate and trusting in your unique abilities, grants you the necessary resources and the absolute secrecy required for these experiments. You are acutely aware of the line you tread. The Church views some alchemical practices with deep suspicion, seeing them as attempts to usurp divine power or even as pacts with darker forces. The distinction between natural magic, the understanding and manipulation of nature's hidden sympathies, and outright sorcery is often blurry, and in the hands of the ignorant or the fearful, any deviation from established norms can be condemned. You carefully guard your methods, revealing only the finished product, a potent draft or a carefully prepared unguent, whose mysterious origins only add to its perceived efficacy in the royal chamber. Consider the preparation of a specific alchemical gold tincture, known as aurum potable or drinkable gold. This was believed to be the ultimate restorative, a liquid form of the most noble metal, purified and rendered digestible to impart its incorruptible nature to the human body. The process is long and intricate, involving the dissolution of gold in aqua regia, a mixture of nitric and hydrochloric acids, followed by careful precipitation and further purification steps. The resulting liquid, perhaps a faint golden hue, is presented to the king as the apex of medical art, a substance beyond the reach of common healers, a testament to your unparalleled dedication and knowledge. You also delve into specific astrological calculations, not just for the timing of bloodletting, but for the very moment of administering an alchemical remedy. You might consult ancient tables, mapping the positions of the planets and stars, seeking a precise conjunction or opposition that promises to amplify the medicine's power, to imbue it with a celestial blessing. This goes beyond simple prognostication. It is an active attempt to weave cosmic energies into the fabric of healing, to align the microcosmos of the king's body with the macrocosmos of the universe itself. This might involve preparing remedies during specific lunar phases, or when certain planets rise or set, believing that these celestial influences contribute vital energy to the treatment. These forbidden arts are not merely abstract theories. They are hands-on, meticulous work. You spend countless hours grinding rare herbs with mortars and pestles made of exotic woods or polished stone, their surfaces gleaming under the dim light. You pour, filter, heat, and cool with the patience of a saint and the precision of a master artisan. Each step is a ritual, each ingredient chosen not just for its physical properties but for its symbolic resonance, its hidden power. You are not just a doctor. You are a cosmic engineer, attempting to rebalance the king's disturbed internal universe using every tool, every secret at your disposal. And when you finally present a small, corked vial of a uniquely colored liquid, or a small box containing a paste that shimmers faintly in the candlelight, you do so with a blend of professional confidence and profound apprehension. You have put your knowledge, your reputation, and perhaps even your soul on the line. The king, frail and desperate, looks to you with an unwavering trust, a trust born of his own hope and your absolute dedication. He drinks the potion or applies the unguent, believing in its secret power, a power that you, his secret physician, have painstakingly and perilously unlocked from the forbidden depths of ancient lore and alchemical pursuit, all for the preservation of his royal life. The weight of this secret knowledge and the immense responsibility that comes with it is a constant companion in your solitary, often perilous, journey as the king's most trusted and most clandestine healer. But this constant companionship, this shadow of immense responsibility, stretches far beyond the king's bedchamber. It infiltrates the very walls of the castle, echoing in every hushed conversation, every suspicious glance. For in the world of kings and crowns, sickness is rarely just sickness. It is a tremor that shakes the foundations of power, an opening for ambition, a whisper that can grow into a roar of rebellion. You, as the king's secret physician, are not merely a healer of the body. You are a keeper of state secrets, an unwitting participant in a silent war where the battlefield is the monarch's very health. Imagine the scene. The king, your patient, lies weak, perhaps feverish, perhaps suffering from a chronic ailment that saps his strength. His vulnerability is palpable, a scent in the air that ambitious courtiers and envious relatives can detect like hounds on a fresh trail. Every cough, every pallor, every moment of confusion or delirium is magnified 100-fold, scrutinized not for its medical implications alone, but for its political weight. Who stands to gain if the king falters? Who has been patiently waiting in the wings, their own power curtailed by the monarch's robust health? The succession hangs precariously on the thread of your patient's life, and you hold that thread in your hands. Your every diagnosis, every prognosis, carries the potential to ignite a power struggle, to shift alliances, to plunge the realm into uncertainty or even civil war. If you declare the king too weak to rule, a regent may be appointed, changing the course of history. If you announce a rapid recovery when none is truly underway, you might delay an inevitable crisis, but also risk exposing yourself as a liar, perhaps even a conspirator. The pressure is immense. You are approached in hushed tones and shadowed corridors, presented with velvet pouches overflowing with gold, or offered lands and titles, all for a particular interpretation of the king's symptoms. A subtle exaggeration here, a slight downplaying there. Perhaps His Majesty is merely fatigued, you might be urged to say when you know a deeper malady is at work. Or, conversely, he is gravely ill, his mind perhaps wandering, when you believe a full recovery is possible with time and care. The moral tightrope you walk is thinner than any surgeon's thread. Then there is the most insidious weapon of all, poison. In an era before advanced forensics, before toxicology was even a dream, the fear of poison was an omnipresent dread in royal courts. Every sudden illness, every unexpected death of a powerful figure, was immediately suspected. And who better to administer such a deadly concoction, or at least to facilitate its administration, than the trusted physician with unrestricted access to the king's food, drink, and personal remedies? You become a shield not just against disease but against deliberate malice. You must taste the king's food, a common practice for trusted servants, but for you, it is a personal chemical analysis. You must scrutinize every vial, every powder, every preparation. A sudden shift in the king's condition, a new symptom that defies your understanding of natural illness, sends a chill down your spine. Is it the plague? A rare fever? Or is it the silent work of a desperate enemy? You develop an acute sense of observation, not just for the signs of illness, but for the signs of tampering. The faint almond scent that should not be there. A subtle discoloration in the wine. A new servant hovering too closely, offering a new, untested delicacy. Your medical knowledge, usually a tool for healing, transforms into an instrument of detection, a defense against murder most foul. But what if you fail to detect it? What if a poison, clever and undetectable, slips past your guard? The king's health declines rapidly, and you, the most trusted healer, are suddenly implicated. Your failure to save him might be interpreted not as medical incompetence, but as active complicity. The angry shouts of the court, the suspicious glares of the queen and princes, can quickly turn into accusations of treason. You could find yourself dragged to the dungeons, tortured for confessions you cannot give, your reputation, your life, and the lives of your family, extinguished in a single brutal stroke. The pressure extends beyond detection to prevention. Sometimes you are tasked with creating antidotes, not just for theoretical poisoning but for real, tangible threats. You might spend sleepless nights in your laboratory, blending exotic herbs and minerals, researching obscure texts for forgotten remedies, all in the desperate hope of preparing a sovereign defense. You are a walking pharmacy, a walking target, a living repository of life and death. Consider the political implications of your pronouncements. If a king begins to show signs of mental instability, perhaps a lingering fever that affects his mind, or a hereditary melancholia, your words can determine the fate of an entire kingdom. To declare a king mad, or incapable of ruling, is a monumental act, a power that few others possess. This declaration could empower a regent, destabilize the current government, or even invite foreign intervention. You are acutely aware that your professional opinion is not merely a medical assessment. It is a political weapon. The danger of this weapon, however, cuts both ways. Your enemies, or even those who simply wish to see you removed from your position of trust, can turn your own knowledge against you. False accusations of malpractice, of administering harmful remedies, or even of attempting to poison the king yourself, are ever-present threats. A rival physician eager for your prestigious role might subtly undermine your credibility, sowing seeds of doubt in the minds of the royal family. You learn to navigate this treacherous landscape with a combination of unwavering loyalty, cunning discretion, and a profound understanding of human nature. You must be impeccably loyal to your king, for any perceived wavering could be fatal. You must be discreet to an almost obsessive degree, never revealing the king's private ailments, never gossiping about court intrigues, for every word can be twisted, every confidence betrayed. And you must understand the ambition, the fear, the greed, and the desperation that drive the powerful figures around you, for these are the forces that shape your daily existence. You cultivate a reputation not just for medical skill, but for unshakable integrity, a shield against the accusations that inevitably come with such a powerful and perilous position. You become a master of subtle communication, speaking in metaphors or veiled terms when in the presence of others, reserving your frankest assessments for the king alone, or his most trusted advisors. Your medical notes, if you keep them, are coded and cryptic, understood only by you, lest they fall into the wrong hands and become instruments of mischief. The king's health is the kingdom's health, and you are its most vital yet most vulnerable protector. You carry the weight of succession on your shoulders, the peace of the realm resting on your diagnoses. Every decision you make, every treatment you prescribe, every secret you keep, contributes to a delicate balance that can be shattered by a single misstep. In this world of opulent deceit and cutthroat ambition, your pursuit of healing is entwined with the brutal realities of power. You are not just a doctor. You are a sentinel, a strategist, a silent combatant in a war fought with whispers and potions, where the ultimate prize is the throne itself. Your secret knowledge, your unique access, and your immense responsibility make you both invaluable and incredibly exposed, a solitary figure navigating a web of intrigues, with your own life hanging by the same fragile thread as your royal patience. Your presence in the royal chambers is a double-edged sword, a testament to your skill and a constant reminder of the sovereign power that dictates every breath you take within these walls. You are not merely attending to a patient. You are serving a living symbol, a monarch whose will is as absolute as the stone ramparts protecting his castle. His mandate is the very air you breathe, heavy with expectation and unspoken threats. You understand with a chilling clarity that your loyalty must be unwavering, your discretion impenetrable, and your success inevitable. You stand by the king's bedside, the heavy velvet drapes muffling the distant sounds of the court. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and old tapestries, and perhaps, the subtle aroma of the king's illness. You observe him not just with a physician's eye, but with the keen perception of a man whose future is entirely tethered to this single life. Every flicker of his eyelid, every shallow breath, every discomforting groan is amplified in your mind, analyzed for its potential impact on the kingdom. This is not simply about fever or flux. This is about the stability of the realm. The king's health, is far more than a personal affliction. It is a matter of state, a political instrument wielded by those who seek power, and a source of profound anxiety for the people. A strong king inspires confidence. A weak king invites rebellion, challenges from ambitious nobles, and incursions from rival kingdoms. Your failure to maintain his vigor, or worse, your inability to prevent his demise, would not merely be a medical catastrophe. It would be a national crisis, and you, the one closest to the monarch's failing body, would undoubtedly be held accountable. The whispers of witchcraft, of poisoning, of plain incompetence would swirl, and your finely honed medical knowledge would offer little defense against the swift, merciless justice of the crown. You are acutely aware that your access to the king, a privilege granted to so few, comes with an ironclad obligation to absolute silence. What you see, what you hear, what you infer in these private moments, must never leave this room. Not a hint, not a sigh, not an expression of concern can escape your lips or your demeanor. The king's physical frailties are state secrets, vulnerabilities that could be exploited by enemies both within and without the palace walls. Imagine the chaos, the power struggles, if word spread that the king suffered from a debilitating tremor, or a persistent cough that left him gasping, or a swelling that made movement painful. The implications are staggering. Your duty, therefore, extends beyond diagnosis and treatment. You are a living vault, a walking repository of the king's most intimate truths. Should you betray this trust, even inadvertently, the consequences would be swift and brutal. You have heard the stories of those who dared to cross the monarch, or who were simply perceived to have failed. A dungeon cell, a swift execution, the confiscation of all property, and the lasting dishonor of your family name. These are not idle threats. They are the fundamental rules of engagement when serving such a powerful master. You carry this knowledge not as a burden, but as a constant, icy reminder to be ever vigilant, ever discreet. The king's unyielding will permeates every aspect of your professional life. Your daily routine is dictated by his needs and the unpredictable rhythms of his body. You must be available at all hours, ready to be summoned from your bed in the dead of night, to travel at a moment's notice with the royal retinue, or to remain confined within the castle walls for weeks on end if his condition requires constant observation. Your personal life, your own desires, your family, all become secondary to the paramount importance of the king's health. You live in a state of perpetual readiness, a silent shadow always within earshot, always prepared to interpret a subtle grimace or a sudden flush. Consider the immense pressure of a royal command that defies medical sense. What if the king, in his stubbornness or his ignorance, demands a treatment you know to be dangerous, or refuses a remedy you believe essential? You are a man of science, of learning, trained to follow the principles of Hippocrates and Galen. But the king's will is a force greater than any medical text. You cannot openly contradict him without risking his displeasure, a path that leads to ruin. You must navigate this treacherous terrain with supreme diplomacy, attempting to persuade, to suggest, to gently guide, all while preserving the illusion that the king's wishes are paramount. You must be both physician and courtier, a master of subtle influence rather than direct confrontation. You recall instances where other physicians, perhaps less skilled in the delicate art of courtly persuasion, met their downfall. A royal ailment worsened, not due to medical error, but because the king insisted on a certain diet or a particular activity against all professional advice. When the inevitable decline occurred, the fault was rarely laid at the king's feet. Instead, the physician bore the brunt of royal anger, accused of incompetence or even malice. You remember the chill that ran down your spine when you heard tales of doctors who disappeared into the dungeons, their lives and reputations extinguished because the sovereign's body failed, despite or even because of their best efforts. This constant tightrope walk, between your medical conscience and the imperative of royal obedience, defines your existence. You might possess remedies that could alleviate pain, but if the king believes pain is a divine trial, you might be forbidden to offer relief. You might advocate for rest and quiet, but if the king insists on attending a hunting party or a state banquet, you must follow, watchful and helpless. You are a custodian of his body, but the ultimate authority over that body remains his own, immutable and often illogical. The secret nature of your profession is not just about protecting the king, it is about protecting the myth of the king. To reveal that the king suffers from chronic digestive issues, or that he struggles with bouts of melancholy, or that his vision is failing, is to dismantle the very image of divine right and invincibility that underpins his rule. You are a craftsman of illusions, painting a picture of robust health even as you administer tinctures for his malaise. You become adept at diverting attention, at subtly manipulating conversations, at offering reassurances that belie the true gravity of a situation. The court, the nobles, the common folk, all must believe in the king's enduring strength. Your role is to help maintain that belief whatever the cost to your own peace of mind. And the cost is significant. You live in a constant state of elevated anxiety, your senses perpetually alert, your mind racing through contingencies. Sleep offers little respite, often plagued by dreams of royal illness or political intrigue. You cannot confide in colleagues, for the very nature of your work demands unparalleled isolation. You cannot speak freely to your family, lest a careless word inadvertently endanger them. You are a man burdened with extraordinary knowledge and an even more extraordinary responsibility, yet you must appear calm, confident, and utterly impenetrable. This solitude, born of absolute secrecy, is perhaps one of the heaviest prices you pay for your privileged position. The unyielding will of the crown is not merely a decree, it is a pervasive atmosphere, a silent pressure that shapes your every decision and limits your every freedom. You are a physician, yes, but first and foremost, you are a servant, an instrument of power, bound by an unbreakable oath of silence and an unspoken contract that demands nothing less than perfection. Your life, your reputation, your very soul, are entirely at the disposal of the monarch, balanced precariously on the ebb and flow of royal health and royal favor. This is the mandate you have accepted, and from which there is no honorable retreat. You are forever entangled in the delicate dance between life and death, power and vulnerability, all under the watchful, demanding eye of the king. You understand the weight of that watchful, demanding eye. It sees not just your successes but your failures, real or perceived. For all the gilded cages and whispered secrets, the life of a royal physician is a constant tightrope walk across an abyss. The very same power that elevates you to such heights can, in an instant, shatter your world into a million pieces. Your unique position as confidant and healer to the monarch carries with it an extraordinary, chilling risk. Because when a king falls ill, when the royal pulse falters, when the breath grows shallow, the blame must land somewhere. And all too often, that somewhere is directly at your feet. Imagine the tremor that runs through your hands, a barely perceptible shake as you feel the king's brow hotter than it should be. The court whispers turn into an audible hum, a growing pressure that presses down on you from all sides. Every member of the royal household, from the lowliest stable hand to the highest-ranking noble, watches your every move, scrutinizes your every decision. Their future, their security, their very lives, often hinge on the health of the monarch. If you fail, the ripple effect of that failure can spread through the entire kingdom, destabilizing alliances, igniting succession crises, and inviting invasion. You are not just treating a man, you are treating the embodiment of the state itself. In a world where medical understanding is still rudimentary, where the humors are believed to govern all bodily functions, and where invisible maladies can strike down the mightiest ruler, your task is Sisyphean. You are expected to perform miracles, to snatch life from the jaws of death, to defy the very course of nature. Yet you are armed with little more than herbal concoctions, bloodletting tools, poultices, and a deep, if imperfect, knowledge of anatomy and physiology gleaned from ancient texts and forbidden dissections. You are a man of science to the extent that science exists in your era, but you are also a man grappling with forces beyond your complete comprehension. Consider the diseases that plague the age. The sweating sickness, a terrifying and rapid killer that could fell a strong man in mere hours. The dreaded plague, leaving its telltale buboes and a trail of devastation wherever it touched. Consumption, a slow, wasting disease that gnawed at the lungs and strength. These are not illnesses that respond readily to your most advanced treatments. When the king suffers from such an ailment, when his strength ebbs with each passing day, when your every intervention proves futile, a cold dread begins to creep into your heart. You know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that your time may be running out. The failure to cure in the royal court is rarely seen as a limitation of medicine itself. Instead, it is often interpreted as a failure of skill, a lack of dedication, or worse, outright malevolence. You may be accused of incompetence, of administering the wrong remedies, or of failing to recognize the signs of recovery. But the most insidious and dangerous accusation, one that hangs like a sword over your head, is that of poisoning. In an age rife with political intrigue and power struggles, The sudden illness or death of a monarch is seldom attributed to natural causes alone. Plots are everywhere, suspected in every shadow, whispered in every corridor. And who, pray tell, has closer access to the king's food, drink, and medicine than you, his most trusted physician? You are the perfect scapegoat, the ideal instrument for an enemy, or the convenient fall guy for a regime seeking to deflect blame. Imagine the fear as the king's condition worsens, not because of some insidious poison, but because his body simply cannot fight off a virulent fever. Yet the suspicion blossoms like a noxious weed. Eyes follow you with a new intensity. Courtiers who once sought your counsel now recoil from your presence. The friendly smile of the steward turns into a grimace. The food taster, once a minor annoyance, becomes a constant, judgmental shadow. Every new symptom, every new setback, is interpreted not as the progression of disease, but as further evidence of your sinister hand. The whispers grow louder. They reach the ears of the grieving family, the anxious nobles, the ambitious rivals. Soon you find yourself summoned not to the king's bedchamber, but to a different room, one with fewer tapestries and more shadows. There, before a council of stern faces, you are interrogated. Your methods are questioned. Your loyalties are challenged. Every ingredient in every potion you ever prescribed is scrutinized as if it were a deadly venom. The accusations often extend beyond mere incompetence or poisoning. In a time steeped in superstition and religious fervor, you might be accused of sorcery, of witchcraft, of dealing with dark arts to harm the king. Your knowledge, which was once your greatest asset, can be twisted into a dangerous weapon against you. Your understanding of herbs, your ability to mix strange concoctions, your very scientific approach, can be seen as evidence of forbidden practices. The Church, ever vigilant against heresy, might add its voice to the chorus of condemnation, sealing your fate with theological pronouncements. The consequences for a failed royal physician are seldom subtle. If you are fortunate, you might merely lose your position, banished from court, stripped of your lands and titles, forced to live out your days in ignominious obscurity, your reputation utterly destroyed. But for many the price is far, far steeper. You might be imprisoned, thrown into a cold, damp dungeon beneath the castle, far from the light of day. The silence of your cell, once a refuge in your secret life, now presses in on you, heavy with the weight of impending doom. There your former privileges vanish. The fine silks are replaced by coarse wool. The rich food by meager rations. The scholarly pursuits by endless, agonizing hours of waiting and dread. Interrogation, often involving torture, becomes your new reality. The rack, the thumbscrews, the iron maiden, instruments designed to extract confessions, true or false. Under such duress, many innocent men have confessed to crimes they never committed, simply to end the excruciating pain. Your medical knowledge, your understanding of the human body, becomes a cruel irony as you experience its limits in the most brutal ways imaginable. And then, for many, comes the final, irreversible judgment. The executioner's block. The gallows. Heads indeed roll. The very secrets you swore to keep, the intimate details of the king's health, the private moments in his chambers, are buried with you. Your life, once so precious and privileged, is extinguished as a public spectacle, a stark warning to any who might dare to displease the crown or, more accurately, to fail in their impossible task. Imagine the walk to the scaffold. The jeering crowds. The chilling clang of the bell. The rough hands of the guards. The executioner, a hooded figure, waiting patiently with his gleaming axe. Your last thoughts are not of the wealth you accumulated, nor the cures you achieved, but of the arbitrary nature of power, the injustice of your fate, and the cold, unyielding reality that in this dangerous game, you were merely a pawn, however skilled. Your family too suffers. Your wife, your children, are left destitute, their name tainted by your perceived treachery. Their lands might be confiscated, their prospects ruined. The legacy you hoped to build, a legacy of healing and wisdom, is replaced by one of shame and infamy. The shadow of your execution extends far beyond your own life, casting a long dark pall over generations. This is the ever-present, silent dread that accompanies you every single day you serve the king. It is the counterweight to the immense power and prestige. Every decision, every diagnosis, every drop of medicine you administer, is weighed not just against the potential for healing, but against the potential for disaster, for accusation, for the ultimate price. You carry the burden of this knowledge constantly, a quiet hum beneath the surface of your outward calm. The secrecy that defined your life, the very mechanism that allowed you to operate in the shadows, becomes a double-edged sword. It protected the king's vulnerabilities, but it also shielded the processes of your condemnation from scrutiny. No public trial, no open defense. Just the swift, decisive action of a ruler whose authority is absolute and whose patience for failure is non-existent. You are a master of medicine, a scholar of the human body, but you are also a prisoner of your own success, forever caught between the demands of science and the whims of power. The unseen toll is not just the stress, the sleepless nights, the constant vigilance. It is the profound understanding that your life is never truly your own, that it can be forfeited on the altar of royal ill health, a mere collateral damage in the grand, brutal theater of medieval monarchy. It is a chilling reminder that while you wield the power of healing, others wield the power of life and death over you. And sometimes those powers are one and the same. You understand now the razor's edge of treating a king. But your journey into the secret chambers of medieval medicine is not complete without stepping behind another, even more delicate curtain, the world of the royal consort. Here the stakes are different, perhaps less about immediate political succession through your failure, but far more personal, deeply intimate, and profoundly tied to the very future of the dynasty. Imagine yourself now not just as the king's physician, but as the trusted, utterly discreet doctor to his queen. You might initially assume her health concerns would be less pressing, less fraught with political peril. You would be gravely mistaken. In the medieval era, a queen's primary, often singular, purpose was to bear heirs, specifically male heirs. Her body was not entirely her own, it was a vessel of state, a living guarantee of dynastic continuity. You are called to her private apartments, a space typically more secluded, more heavily guarded from prying eyes than even the king's council chambers. The air here might be thick with the scent of dried herbs, rose water, or perhaps the faint, lingering aroma of incense. The light is often softer, filtered through tapestries or smaller, higher windows. Unlike the bustling court or the king's more public presence, the queen's world is one of carefully controlled access and profound privacy. When you enter, you might find her surrounded by her ladies-in-waiting, perhaps a midwife or a confessor. Your presence as a male physician is already a testament to the gravity of her condition. For many minor ailments or for routine care, female attendants or wise women would have sufficed. But when the queen's health, or more importantly her ability to conceive or carry to term, is at stake, your specialized knowledge becomes indispensable. Your examination of the queen is a study in both medical necessity and extreme decorum. You are not allowed the same directness, the same physical access, you might have with a male patient. Modesty is paramount. Layers of clothing are adjusted, not removed. Screens might be used. Your hands, trained to diagnose the subtle shifts of the body, must navigate through fabrics and societal expectations. You rely even more heavily on observation, on pulse-taking, on questioning the queen and her attendants about her symptoms, her humors, her appetite, her sleep. Consider the immense pressure on a queen. Each month, a cycle of hope and despair. Each pregnancy, a 9-month ordeal fraught with danger. Each birth, a perilous journey where both mother and child face terrifying odds. You, the physician, are intimately aware of these silent battles. You see the faint lines of worry around her eyes, the forced smile she presents to the court, the underlying tremor in her voice when she confides her deepest fears to you, the one person sworn to secrecy and dedicated to her physical well-being. One of the most common and most politically charged ailments you confront is infertility. A queen who fails to produce an heir, particularly a male one, lives under a constant shadow. Whispers of divine displeasure, accusations of barrenness, or even suggestions of witchcraft can circulate. Your task is not just to find a cure, but to offer hope, to provide remedies that, while often ineffective by modern standards, offer a sense of proactive effort. You might prescribe special diets, exotic herbs, ritualistic baths, or even recommend pilgrimages to holy sites known for fertility miracles. You are not just a healer, you are a beacon of hope in a world that can be brutally unforgiving. Then comes pregnancy. From the moment conception is suspected, a new layer of anxiety descends. Every cough, every fever, every discomfort becomes a potential threat to the fragile life within her. You are her constant shadow, monitoring her diet, prescribing specific exercises or rest, mixing tinctures to calm morning sickness or alleviate swelling. You understand that the health of the heir is directly tied to the health of the mother, and thus to the stability of the realm. Childbirth itself is a monumental event, perhaps the most dangerous medical challenge a medieval woman, royal or common, would face. You are present, of course, but often in a secondary role to the experienced midwives. Your expertise comes into play when complications arise, when the labor is prolonged, when the child presents awkwardly, or when the mother begins to fail. The tools at your disposal are painfully limited. Forceps are rare or rudimentary. Surgical interventions are almost unthinkable for a living mother. Your primary recourse is knowledge of anatomy, patience, positioning, and perhaps a desperate prayer alongside the attending priests. You have witnessed, more times than you care to remember, the agonizing wait, the hushed prayers, the fear etched on the faces of the Queen's ladies. You have felt the crushing weight of failure when a child is stillborn, or when the Queen herself succumbs to puerperal fever, the dreaded childbed fever, an infection that ravaged new mothers, its cause utterly unknown in your era. The silence that follows such a tragedy is deafening, a vacuum where joy should have been, leaving behind a heartbroken king, a devastated court, and a physician haunted by what he could not prevent. Conversely, you have also been present at moments of immense triumph. The cry of a newborn, especially a healthy male heir, sends a wave of profound relief through the chamber, through the palace, and throughout the kingdom. You are privy to the Queen's raw, overwhelming joy, her relief, her tears of exhaustion and gratitude. In these moments, your value is immeasurable, your standing among the royal household cemented, and the dynasty secured at least for a time. But even after a successful birth, your duties continue. Postpartum care is critical. The Queen's recovery from the ordeal of childbirth is paramount. You monitor her for signs of infection, for milk fever, for depression that can sometimes follow such a momentous event. You ensure she regains her strength, ready to face the demands of court life, and perhaps to conceive again. The medical secrets of the Queen are held even tighter than those of the king. A king's illness might temporarily incapacitate him, but a queen's inability to bear children or her death in childbirth could plunge a kingdom into civil war or diplomatic crisis. Any hint of weakness, any suggestion of a physical defect that might be passed to an heir, could be catastrophic. Your lips are sealed, your knowledge is sacred trust, not merely professional but existential for the realm. You become, in a profound sense, more than just a physician. You are a confidant, a silent witness to the most intimate and vulnerable moments of a woman whose life is public property, but whose pains are intensely private. You see her not just as a royal consort, but as a woman enduring the universal struggles of fertility, pregnancy, and motherhood, magnified by the suffocating pressures of her crown. This hidden world of royal female health illuminates another facet of your perilous profession. While the king's well-being is often a matter of immediate political stability, the Queen's health is intrinsically linked to the long-term survival and future legacy of the entire royal line. You navigate not only the complexities of the human body but also the intricate, often brutal, tapestry of medieval politics, gender roles, and dynastic ambition. You are the silent guardian of the queen's hidden pains, bearing witness to their resilience, their suffering, and their ultimate vital role in shaping history, all from the hushed secrecy of their private chambers. You have attended to the royal body with all the knowledge and skill your era affords. You have prescribed tonics made from herbs gathered under specific moon phases, applied poultices of potent mixtures, and perhaps even carefully overseen bloodletting, balancing the humors with meticulous precision. You have whispered reassurances in Latin, felt the feverish brow of a king, and witnessed the fragile dawn of life in a queen's chambers. Yet, despite your most fervent efforts, despite your years of rigorous study and your privileged access to the most advanced medical texts of the age, you are keenly aware of the limitations. The medieval world, even within the gilded walls of a palace, lives in the shadow of the unknown. Sickness often strikes without warning or discernible cause, baffling even the most astute physician. Fevers rage, wounds fester beyond healing, and the mysterious wasting diseases slowly consume their victims, defying every potion and prayer you can conjure. In these moments, when your remedies falter, when the king's cough deepens or the queen's strength ebbs away despite your tireless ministrations, another, more profound form of intervention is sought. You stand by the royal bedchamber door, perhaps, listening to the murmurs within. The flickering candlelight casts long, dancing shadows on the tapestries depicting biblical scenes. The air, usually thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and stale linens, now carries the faint, sweet perfume of incense. The rhythmic drone of Latin prayers, chanted by a chaplain or a visiting bishop, penetrates the heavy oak. This is where your science ends and divine grace begins, where the earthly remedies surrender to the celestial. For your royal patience, just like for every peasant in the furthest corners of the kingdom, the ultimate healer is God. Sickness is often perceived not merely as an imbalance of humors, but as a test of faith, a punishment for sin, or even a demonic affliction. While your role is to address the physical manifestations, the spiritual dimension of illness is equally, if not more, critical. You watch as a different kind of healing ceremony unfolds. Imagine the king weakened by a prolonged fever, his skin clammy, his breath shallow. You have exhausted your pharmacopoeia. Now a procession enters. Priests, robed in vestments of rich silk and gold thread, carry sacred objects. Perhaps it is a reliquary, a small ornate casket containing a fragment of a saint's bone, a sliver of wood believed to be from the true cross, or a piece of fabric touched by a miracle worker. These are not mere symbols, they are conduits of divine power, tangible links to the supernatural. You observe the solemn ritual. The reliquary is carefully placed upon the king's chest, or he is gently helped to touch it, his frail fingers trembling. Prayers are offered, petitions to Saint Sebastian, patron saint against plague, or to Saint Roch, protector against infectious diseases. The queen, perhaps suffering from a persistent cough or the lingering weakness after a difficult childbirth, might be encouraged to wear a blessed amulet, a small pouch containing holy relics or inscribed with sacred verses, close to her skin. She might make a vow to undertake a pilgrimage if she recovers, dedicating herself to a journey to Canterbury, Rome, or Santiago de Compostela. Pilgrimages are not just acts of piety. They are potent medical interventions in their own right. The arduous journey itself, undertaken in faith, is believed to purify the soul and strengthen the body. The holy sites, often associated with miraculous cures, are seen as spiritual hospitals. Imagine the queen, frail but determined, setting out on such a journey, not because you prescribed it, but because her soul, and those of her advisors, demanded it. You might even be part of her retinue, not as a physician offering remedies, but as a caretaker, ensuring her physical comfort on the challenging path to spiritual healing. Your role shifts from healer to guardian of her journey towards divine solace. The entire court, including you, understands this parallel system of healing. It is not a contradiction but a complement. A successful recovery is often attributed not solely to your skill, but to the combined grace of God and the intercession of saints, perhaps even facilitated by your humble, earthly efforts. When a patient recovers, thanks are given first to the Almighty, then to the saints, and only then, often in passing, to the diligent physician who attended to their needs. You accept this, for it is the order of the world you inhabit. You might be present when the king, after a seemingly miraculous recovery, attributes his renewed vigor to a specific saint whose relic was brought to his bedside. You nod, offering your own silent prayers of thanks, for it reinforces the belief system that underpins society. Moreover, you understand the profound psychological impact of faith. In a world where pain was often inescapable and death a constant companion, the hope offered by divine intervention was a powerful tonic in itself. The belief that one was not abandoned, that celestial forces were watching, could quell anxiety, boost morale, and perhaps even stimulate the body's own healing mechanisms. Sometimes, the seeking of divine intervention takes on a more urgent, public form. You might witness a royal procession through the city streets, a king or queen, dressed in penitential robes, walking barefoot, sometimes even carrying a heavy cross, appealing directly to God and the populace for prayers during a time of widespread illness or personal affliction. These are not merely symbolic gestures. They are acts of profound faith and political performance, demonstrating humility and piety to a populace that shares the same beliefs. As the royal physician, you are part of this grand tableau, a silent observer of the interplay between earthly power and heavenly grace. Your position, while privileged, does not place you above this spiritual framework. You too are a man of your age, likely a believer. You may offer your own prayers for your royal patient, invoke the aid of specific saints known for healing, or even recommend a spiritual cure alongside your physical one. Perhaps you suggest a period of fasting and prayer, or recommend the offering of alms to the poor as a means of earning divine favor. These actions are not seen as separate from your medical practice but as integral parts of a holistic approach to well-being. Consider the atmosphere after a protracted illness, where your medicines have done little, and the patient seems to be fading. The mood of despair begins to lift only when the local bishop arrives with a fragment of a revered saint's garment. Suddenly, the entire energy of the room shifts. Hope, once extinguished, flickers anew. The king's eyes, dull with pain, might momentarily brighten. This is the power of faith, a force you cannot measure with your instruments or understand with your anatomical charts, but one you absolutely must acknowledge and respect. The quest for divine intervention is not a sign of your failure as a physician, but rather an acknowledgement of the ultimate power that lies beyond human comprehension. It is a vital safety net, a source of solace and meaning when the body betrays, and the mind struggles with suffering. You learn to navigate this dual world of rational medicine and fervent faith, understanding that to truly serve your royal patient, you must minister not only to their body but also to their immortal soul. You are a pragmatist, yes, but you are also a witness to profound spiritual belief. The whispers in the antechamber, the soft chants from the chapel, the sight of a pilgrim's staff leaning against the castle wall, these are all part of the royal healing process. You are not just a dispenser of remedies, you are a facilitator of hope, a witness to miracles, and a silent participant in the intricate dance between human effort and divine will. In the medieval court, the well-being of the monarch is a matter of both terrestrial politics and celestial favor, and you, the royal physician, stand at the delicate intersection of both. Your hands may hold the scalpel and the herb, but your eyes must always acknowledge the heavens above, from which true solace and often true healing is believed to descend. As the solemn appeals to the heavens and the subtle adjustments to diet yield no improvement, as the fever persists and the royal patient's breathing grows more labored, a new, graver reality descends upon the bedchamber. The time for watchful waiting and gentle remedies has passed. Now you must prepare for the desperate measures, for the early cuts that stand as stark testament to medicine's limited understanding and immense courage. You are about to step into the harrowing realm of medieval surgery and invasive treatments, performed often in hushed tones, away from prying eyes, preserving the king's dignity even as his body undergoes the most brutal interventions. You stand by the bed, your gaze sweeping over the tools laid out on a clean linen cloth. They are simple, perhaps even crude by modern standards, yet in your practiced hands, each one is an instrument of desperate hope. There is the gleam of polished steel, the dark wood of a handle, the sharp edge of a blade. You know that every incision, every cauterization, every extraction carries immense risk. The king's life, and by extension the stability of the realm, rests on your ability to navigate these perils. One of the most common and often first, invasive steps you consider is bloodletting. The prevailing theory of humors dictates that illness is caused by an imbalance in the body's four vital fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much blood, for example, could lead to a fever, a flush, or a fit of madness. To restore balance, blood must be removed. You might employ leeches, small wriggling creatures with a voracious appetite for blood, applied to the skin to draw out the offending humor. Or you might opt for venesection, a more direct and dramatic approach. You select a specific vein, perhaps in the arm or the neck, guided by centuries of anatomical observation. With a swift, precise movement, you make a small incision with a lancet, a tiny sharp blade. A stream of dark, rich blood flows into a basin held by an assistant. You watch its color, its consistency, searching for clues to the king's ailment. How much to take? That is the agonizing question. Too little and the illness may persist. Too much and you risk weakening an already fragile patient, perhaps sending them to an early grave. You are balancing on a knife edge, judging the ebb and flow of life itself. The air in the room is thick with tension, with the metallic tang of blood, and the silent prayers of everyone present. You wipe the sweat from your brow, your concentration absolute. But what if the affliction is more localized, more stubbornly resistant to the balancing of humors? What if a wound festers or a growth appears that threatens to choke the life from your royal charge? Then your gaze turns to other, even more formidable tools. Consider the removal of a tumor, a visible, painful lump beneath the skin. In an era without germ theory, without effective anesthesia beyond perhaps a strong dose of opium or alcohol, such an operation is a harrowing ordeal. You prepare your instruments, sharp knives, forceps, probes. The king, if conscious, must be held down, perhaps by several strong attendants. His screams are not unheard of, though you endeavor to work as swiftly and cleanly as possible. You make the incision, plunging through layers of skin and muscle, your hands steady despite the frantic struggle, the copious bleeding. You must excise the diseased tissue, hoping that you get it all, praying that you do not nick a major artery or provoke an uncontrollable hemorrhage. The sight, the smell, the sound of such a procedure is enough to test the strongest constitution. After the removal, the challenge of stopping the bleeding and preventing infection looms large. This is where the red-hot iron often makes its terrifying appearance. Cauterization. You might have heated an iron rod or a specialized cautery tool in a brazier until it glows orange-red. Then, with a deep breath and a steely resolve, you apply the searing metal directly to the raw, bleeding tissue. The hiss, the smoke, the smell of burning flesh fill the air. The agonizing pain is immediate and profound. Yet, you understand its purpose: to seal blood vessels, to sterilize the wound in a crude but effective way, to prevent the insidious creeping of putrefaction. It is a barbaric act, born of necessity, performed with a solemn awareness of its brutality. Sometimes, the illness manifests within the skull itself. Head traumas, persistent migraines, or even what is perceived as madness or demonic possession, might lead you to consider trepanning. This is the practice of drilling or scraping a hole into the skull, exposing the dura mater, the membrane covering the brain. The belief is that this opening will release evil spirits, or relieve pressure from within, perhaps from a buildup of blood or fluid after an injury. You would use a trephine, a specialized drill with a crown saw, or simply a sharp scraper carefully, painstakingly to bore through bone. The fragility of the brain, the delicate vessels beneath, the absolute certainty of infection if you are not meticulous, these are the risks you weigh. The sight of the pulsating brain, once exposed, is a humbling, terrifying reminder of the preciousness and vulnerability of life. This is a procedure of last resort, a desperate gamble when all other avenues have failed, when the king's very sanity or life hangs in the balance. Beyond the visible cuts, you also employ a range of internal interventions, equally uncomfortable and often deeply unpleasant for the patient. Purgatives, emetics, and enemas are your tools for cleansing the internal humors. You might administer powerful herbal concoctions designed to induce violent vomiting or intense diarrhea, believing that expelling these substances will rid the body of the disease itself. The sounds of retching, the hurried trips to the chamber pot, the overwhelming stench, these are all part of the grim reality of treating the royal body. While less visually dramatic than a surgical cut, these internal purges are no less invasive, no less a desperate assault on the body in the name of healing. You also wield the power of certain potent, sometimes poisonous, herbs. In controlled doses, substances that could kill can also cure. Belladonna for pain, digitalis for the heart, hemlock in minute quantities to calm spasms. You walk a tightrope, carefully measuring each drop, each pinch, knowing that too much could send the king into convulsions or stop his heart. Your knowledge of botany, your understanding of dosages refined over years of practice and study, is paramount. You are an alchemist of the body, transforming deadly compounds into life-saving remedies, if only for a fleeting time. The secrecy surrounding these procedures is absolute. The king's physical frailties are not for public consumption. A weak king can invite rebellion, embolden rivals, or suggest a lack of divine favor. Therefore, these early cuts and desperate measures are performed behind heavy tapestries, in dimly lit chambers, with only a handful of trusted attendants present. You are sworn to silence, your lips sealed against any mention of the king's pain, his struggles, or the harrowing sights you witness. You are not only a physician but a guardian of the crown's image, a silent confidant to the most intimate and vulnerable moments of royal life. You carry the weight of these decisions, these actions, long after the blood is cleaned and the instruments are put away. You remember the king's cries, his stoic endurance, the fearful eyes of his family watching your every move. You question your choices, replaying the moments in your mind, wondering if you did enough, if you did too much, if there was another path you should have taken. The immense responsibility of preserving a life that is so vital to the very fabric of the kingdom is a constant, heavy burden. You are not just treating a man, you are safeguarding a legacy, a dynasty, a nation. And in this shadowed world of early cuts and desperate measures, you are often the only one who truly understands the full, brutal extent of what it takes to try and save a king. The heavy burden you carry, the silent understanding of what it takes to save a king, does not simply vanish once the patient recovers or, sadly, passes on. These experiences etch themselves into your very being, shaping not only your future practice but also the perception of your craft, and in a way the course of history itself. The echoes of your actions, your successes, and your failures resonate far beyond the royal bedchamber. You step away from the immediate crisis, perhaps with a sigh of relief, perhaps with a profound sense of loss. Yet the king's health, his very breath, remains intrinsically linked to your reputation. If he thrives, your renown grows, securing your position, enhancing your wealth, and elevating your family's standing. You might be granted lands, titles, or a handsome pension. Your name might be whispered in learned circles, admired for your skill and the divine favor that seemed to guide your hand. Other nobles will seek your counsel, eager to benefit from the same wisdom and experience that served the crown. You become a living testament to the efficacy of your methods, a beacon of hope in a world often overshadowed by disease and despair. But if the king falters, if your treatments prove insufficient, or if fate deals an unkind hand, the shadow of failure can cling to you just as stubbornly. You might find yourself out of favor, your once illustrious career curtailed, or even facing accusations of incompetence or treason. The stakes are impossibly high, a constant tightrope walk between glory and ruin. Every decision, every concoction, every incision carries not just the weight of a single life, but the immense potential to alter your own destiny and the future of your lineage. This is the personal legacy you forge in the royal shadow, a testament to the risks inherent in attending the most powerful man in the land. Beyond your personal fortunes, your time as a royal physician contributes to a broader, albeit often unwritten, medical legacy. You are at the forefront of the limited medical knowledge of your age. The unique challenges of treating a king, often involving rare or exotic remedies, experimental surgeries, or innovative diagnostic observations, push the boundaries of your understanding. You might meticulously record your findings, perhaps in private journals or through correspondence with other learned men, contributing to the slow, incremental growth of medical science. These observations, though sometimes shrouded in alchemical mysticism or rooted in ancient theories, contain kernels of genuine insight hard-won through desperate royal cases. Consider the meticulous attention given to royal humors, diet, and daily routines. You are not just treating symptoms. You are attempting to understand the whole person, influenced by the belief that the monarch's health mirrored the health of the kingdom. This holistic, albeit flawed, approach can sometimes lead to surprisingly advanced observations about hygiene, nutrition, and even stress management, long before modern medicine formally recognized their importance. Your notes, your prescribed regimens, your detailed reports to the Privy Council, even if later lost to time, represented the cutting edge of medieval medical practice. And what of the medicines themselves? The royal purse allowed for ingredients of the highest quality, sourced from across the known world. Rare spices, potent herbs, precious stones ground into powders, all passed through your hands. Your careful blending of these elements, your trials and errors, your successes and failures, became a practical laboratory for the age. While many concoctions were undoubtedly ineffective by today's standards, some contained compounds with genuine medicinal properties, and your systematic application, however imperfect, laid groundwork for future understanding. You were a practitioner, yes, but also a quiet researcher, an empiricist in an era of superstition. The most profound, yet often invisible legacy you leave is in the shaping of political power. The health of a monarch is never merely a personal matter, it is a state affair. Your ability to restore an ailing king or to prolong the life of one who is weak can directly influence matters of succession, alliances, and even war. Imagine the fragile balance of power, the rivalries among nobles, the ambitions of heirs. A king's sudden illness or his prolonged recovery could shift the entire political landscape. You, the physician, are often the only one privy to the true extent of the king's condition, a knowledge that is immensely powerful. Your careful pronouncements, your optimistic or grave assessments, hold more sway than any military commander or trusted advisor in these moments. A declaration that the king is recovering well can quell unrest, stabilize the court, and deter opportunistic rivals. Conversely, a private admission of the king's imminent demise can trigger a scramble for power, plunging the realm into uncertainty. You are a silent gatekeeper to information that can literally decide the fate of a kingdom. This is the ultimate secret power you wield, hidden behind the facade of medical neutrality. You are not a politician, yet your every professional act has profound political repercussions. The royal shadow is also where your legacy often remains. Medieval records are not always kind to the individual physician. Their work was, by necessity, discreet. The king's ailments were deeply personal, often embarrassing, and certainly not to be publicly discussed. Your oath of silence, explicit or implicit, protected the crown's image and your own neck. As a result, many of your specific contributions, your clever diagnoses, your daring surgeries, your compassionate care, might be lost to history, overshadowed by the grand narratives of kings and battles. You are a crucial supporting character whose individual lines are often edited out of the final script. Yet even in the shadows your influence reverberates. Dynasties rise and fall, not always on the battlefield, but sometimes in the quiet despair of a sickbed. The child you helped deliver, the wound you closed, the fever you broke, allowed a future king or queen to ascend the throne, whose reign would shape generations. The stability you provided through your dedicated care might have prevented a rebellion or averted a war of succession. These are the subtle ripple effects of your work, often unnoticed by chroniclers focused on grander events, but profoundly felt by the people whose lives were touched by the continuing reign of their monarch. Centuries later, as you walk through the dust of history, you can still perceive the echoes of these healers. You see the faint outlines of their contributions in later medical texts, perhaps attributed to others, or simply absorbed into the collective knowledge. You sense their presence in the enduring protocols for royal health, in the meticulous care still afforded to heads of state, a silent testament to the foundational importance these medieval physicians established. The careful balance between public image and private vulnerability, between scientific aspiration and political necessity, that characterized your practice, remains a persistent challenge for those who attend to power today. You realize that these medieval doctors, toiling in secrecy, facing immense pressure, and operating with rudimentary tools and limited understanding, forged a legacy that is both deeply personal and profoundly historical. Their quiet dedication, their unwavering commitment to their royal patients, and their often perilous journey into the unknown of the human body, left an indelible mark. It is a legacy not always celebrated in shining armor or on grand monuments, but one woven into the very fabric of royal succession, medical progress, and the enduring, complex relationship between power and vulnerability. Their echoes are subtle, yet undeniable, whispering through the corridors of time, reminding us of the unseen hands that often held the fate of nations. You, the royal physician, were one of them, a silent architect of history in the shadow of the crown. You were a silent architect of history in the shadow of the crown, yes. But that shadow often fell upon a precipice. The crown itself, for all its dazzling jewels and formidable weight, was a surprisingly fragile thing. Its stability, its very existence, hinged on one critical, often precarious element: a living, breathing, legitimate heir. Imagine the medieval world, where dynastic succession was not merely a matter of family pride, but the bedrock of an entire kingdom's peace. Without a clear line of descent, without a strong, healthy body to inherit the scepter, the realm could plunge into chaos. Civil war, rival claimants, foreign invasions, these were not abstract fears. They were the ever-present wolves howling at the castle gates, waiting for the scent of weakness, waiting for the crown to falter. Your role, then, extended far beyond merely alleviating pain or mending broken bones. You were a guardian of the dynasty, a silent, often terrified participant in the most profound political drama of all, the continuation of the bloodline. You understood, with every fiber of your being, that the health of the king and, more importantly, the fertility of the queen were matters of state. They were not private ailments to be discussed in hushed tones behind closed doors. They were the very pulse of the kingdom. Consider the pervasive threat of mortality. In your era, life itself was a tenuous flame. For every royal infant born, many did not survive their first year or their fifth. The delicate bodies of newborns were shockingly vulnerable to fevers, infections, and countless unseen maladies. You would have seen it firsthand. The hope, the jubilation, quickly turning to despondent grief as a prince or princess, on whom so many expectations rested, succumbed to a common sickness. You were there to offer comfort, yes, but also to scour your texts for a forgotten remedy, to pray for a miracle, and to explain the inexplicable to heartbroken parents whose personal tragedy was also a national crisis. The Queen herself faced unimaginable dangers. Childbirth was a perilous journey, often a death sentence. To bring a royal heir into the world, she risked her own life in a way few other women did, for her survival was paramount to the kingdom's stability. If she died in labor, and especially if she died without producing a male heir, the political ramifications could be catastrophic. You would be there, a sentinel at the chamber door, your knowledge of herbs and midwifery, your prayers and desperate measures, all bent towards one singular purpose: a living queen and a living child. You would feel the immense pressure, the suffocating weight that dwarfed any other medical challenge. The entire court held its breath. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is it a boy? Is the queen well? Every contraction, every cry, every moment of silence would echo with the collective anxiety of a kingdom. And should the unthinkable happen, should the queen or the infant perish, the blame, however unfair, could easily fall upon your shoulders. Your very life, your reputation, your future, all hung on the successful delivery of that royal baby. Beyond the delivery room, your vigilance never wavered. Ensuring the robust health of the young princes and princesses was a constant preoccupation. You prescribed special diets, concocted preventative elixirs, and watched for the slightest cough or fever with an eagle eye. Each royal child represented an investment, a potential future monarch, and their survival was a testament to your skill and dedication. You learned to read their subtle cues, to understand the unique vulnerabilities of their pampered, yet fragile existences. You were their shadow, their protector, through childhood illnesses and adolescent growing pains, always with the understanding that one day one of them might wear the crown. This close proximity meant you observed their personalities, their strengths and weaknesses, perhaps even their suitability for rule, long before others dared to consider it. And then there was the king himself. His health was a perpetual matter of national security. An ailing king was a weak king, vulnerable to rebellions from within and aggression from without. If he was deemed too sick to rule, too weak to lead, or if rumors of his incapacitation began to circulate, the vultures would gather. You, the royal physician, were therefore entrusted with secrets that could unravel a kingdom. Did the king suffer from a lingering cough that hinted at a deeper malady? Was his mind occasionally clouded by fever or pain, making his judgments erratic? Did he grapple with a secret skin affliction that might be interpreted as divine displeasure? These were not just medical facts, they were state secrets of the highest order. Your lips were sealed tighter than any dungeon door. To speak of such weaknesses, even inadvertently, was treason. You understood that sometimes the truth about the king's health had to be carefully managed, or even outright concealed, for the good of the realm. You became an expert not just in human anatomy and humoral theory, but in the art of political discretion. You learned to craft medical bulletins that were both reassuring and vague, to offer prognoses that instilled confidence while guarding against definitive promises. You mastered the subtle dance of reporting to the council, confirming the king's vitality without giving away the full extent of his ailments. This deception, this delicate balancing act, was not born of malice but of necessity. It was a shield, protecting the monarch and, by extension, the stability of the entire kingdom. Consider the king's injuries from battle or hunt. A broken limb, a deep wound, these were not just physical traumas. They were visible signs of vulnerability. Your swift and effective treatment was crucial, not only for his recovery but for projecting an image of strength and resilience to his people and his enemies. You would work tirelessly, often through the night, to set bones, cleanse wounds, and administer remedies, knowing that every moment of his incapacitation was a moment of potential danger for the crown. The anxiety in the court would be palpable, the murmurs among the lords growing louder with each passing day. The king remained confined to his chambers. The weight of this responsibility was immense. You carried the silent burden of a kingdom on your shoulders. The fate of entire generations, the peace or turmoil of a nation, could hinge on your skilled hands, your keen intellect, and your unwavering discretion. You were the king's confidant, his silent partner in the perilous game of power, a keeper of secrets that, if revealed, could shake the foundations of the throne. You understood that securing the line of kings was not a task left solely to generals on the battlefield or diplomats in the court. It was often decided in the royal bedchamber, in the delivery room, or at the sickbed where you, the physician, stood vigil. You were the one who understood the fragile biology that underpinned the mighty edifice of monarchy. You were the one who fought against the relentless tide of medieval mortality, not just for a life, but for a legacy. You were the silent guardian of the future, ensuring that the crown, for all its inherent fragility, continued to rest securely upon a royal head. You were truly an indispensable part of the unseen machinery that kept the medieval world turning, a protector of the realm in the most intimate and profound way. The very notion of succession, the unbroken chain of kings, was, in a very real sense, your most significant and terrifying patient. This immense responsibility meant your loyalty was paramount. Any suspicion of disloyalty, any hint of intrigue, could lead to a swift and brutal end. You were privy to the king's most private moments, his physical weaknesses, his fears. This intimacy created an unbreakable yet dangerous bond. You were trusted with the ultimate power, the power over life and death, over health and infirmity, knowing that these factors directly influenced the destiny of nations. You held the secret key to the kingdom's continuity, tucked away within your knowledge of the human body and your oath of silence. The oath of silence you swore protected not only the king's physical frailties but also the very nature of your craft. For within your closely guarded knowledge lay the quiet truths of ancient cures, a mosaic of observation, tradition, and belief, far removed from the sharp instruments or potent chemicals of a distant future. Your work was less about dramatic interventions and more about delicate adjustments, an art of balance and gentle persuasion aimed at the intricate ecosystem of the human body. You understood that the king's health was a microcosm of the kingdom itself. A delicate balance, easily disrupted. Your primary approach, therefore, was not to wage war against disease but to restore harmony. You moved with a quiet confidence, your senses finely tuned to every subtle signal emanating from your royal patient. You observed the flush of his cheek, the clarity of his eye, the very texture of his skin. You listened to the cadence of his cough, the rhythm of his breathing, the tremor in his hand. Every detail was a whisper from the body, guiding your hand towards a gentle remedy. Perhaps the most fundamental truth you embraced was the theory of the four humors. You knew that within the king, as within all people, four vital fluids flowed: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Each was associated with an element, a season, and a temperament. A robust king possessed these humors in perfect proportion. Illness, then, was simply an imbalance. Too much blood might make him choleric and feverish, an excess of phlegm, melancholic and lethargic. Your task was to subtly recalibrate, to coax the body back into its natural equilibrium. How did you achieve this delicate rebalancing? Not always with dramatic potions or painful procedures. Often your first prescription was one of lifestyle. You would carefully regulate the king's diet. For a man prone to heat and anger, indicating an excess of blood or yellow bile, you might prescribe cooling foods. Fresh greens, light broths, and fruits. You might advise against rich meats, fiery spices, or heavy wines. Conversely, a king suffering from a chill or melancholy might be urged towards warming spices, hearty stews, and a stronger, warming wine in moderation. Food, you knew, was medicine, a gentle tool to nudge the humors into their proper alignment. Placed incision might be made, allowing a measured quantity of blood to escape. This was not a random act of violence, but a calculated procedure, performed with specific instruments and a deep understanding of anatomy, designed to alleviate the pressure and restore equilibrium. Similarly, if the king's bowels were sluggish, or if you suspected an accumulation of harmful humors within his digestive tract, a purge might be administered. This could involve herbal emetics or laxatives, gently encouraging the body to expel what was deemed unhealthy. Always, these interventions were carried out with the utmost care, observing the king's reaction, adjusting the treatment as needed. The goal was never to weaken the king, but to strengthen him by removing the offending excess. But your role extended beyond the purely physical. You were acutely aware of the intertwining of body and spirit. The king's mental state, his anxieties, his spiritual well-being, all profoundly impacted his physical health. For a king beset by melancholy, you might prescribe not just herbal remedies but also activities that uplifted the spirit. Music, agreeable company, engaging in a favorite pastime, or even a change of scenery. You understood the therapeutic power of joy and peace. You also recognized the profound role of faith in healing. For a devout king, a cure might involve not just your carefully prepared poultices but also prayers, invoking divine intervention. You might encourage him to seek the blessing of a saint, to touch a holy relic, or to engage in quiet contemplation. You knew that hope and belief could be powerful medicines, bolstering the king's will to recover, especially when the body was weak. Your understanding of healing embraced the whole person, acknowledging the sacred as well as the scientific. These ancient cures were not always quick, nor were they always definitively effective in the way modern medicine understands. There was an acceptance of nature's course, a humility in the face of disease that modern practitioners sometimes lack. You sought to ease suffering, to prolong life where possible, and to provide comfort. Your success was measured not just in recovery, but in the careful stewardship of the king's health, the prevention of serious illness, and the maintenance of his royal functions. The quiet truths of your practice lay in this holistic approach, in the patient observation, in the deep respect for natural processes, and in the personalized care you offered. You were not just a doctor, you were a confidant, a spiritual advisor, a dietary consultant, and a living pharmacy. The king's body was a garden, and you, its most diligent and knowledgeable gardener, carefully tending to its every need, ensuring its continued bloom even in the face of inevitable wilting. You knew that the most effective cure was often prevention, and the greatest skill lay in discerning the earliest signs of imbalance. You taught the king subtly to understand his own body, to recognize the precursors of illness. This empowerment, though quiet, was a significant part of your healing philosophy. You were a steward of his longevity, ensuring that he could fulfill his destiny, not through miraculous interventions, but through sustained, gentle care. Your tools were not just your knowledge of herbs or humors, but your sharp intellect, your empathetic heart, and your unwavering commitment to discretion. You navigated the treacherous waters of court politics with the same precision you applied to a diagnosis. The king's health was a state secret, and your quiet truths, though ancient, were powerful enough to shape the course of history, one carefully tended royal body at a time. The fate of nations, you understood, often hinged on the subtle interplay of blood, bile, and phlegm, meticulously managed by your silent, watchful hand.